Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on kind of a little challenge for myself. So over the past week I realized something that is kind of obvious, but it hit me that I do it a certain way and I don't want to do that anymore. So the thing that I don't really do is I don't really draw my characters in environments. They tend to be more free floating and there's more of a suggestion of something but never really a very well-formed background. And I want to change that. I'm ready to add more information to my pieces and hopefully more interest for me to be able to figure out new ways to have the character interact with the background and how to design compositions that involve more of a background or a setting, I think I should say. But yeah, that is what basically today is. I gave myself this challenge where I wanted to create several different mini paintings that focused on the scenery first and foremost, and the figure within them was much smaller than I normally put in my paintings. And I think that's actually one thing that I think will really break me out of some of the monotony that I've been feeling with my paintings, is because I always work on relatively the same scale with a figure, but just working on this where I force myself to create these really tiny figures, there's just so much more real estate in the paper, on the canvas that I'm working on. Even when I'm working on something this tiny, I can always make room for more interesting components to a painting. So that was one thing I learned, that I can make the figures smaller and still have an interesting character, even if they're smaller, even if they're not taking up the whole page. And I think that is a lesson that's still going to take me a little while to really figure out how I want to utilize it. But yeah, that was my lesson number one that I think I learned, was to shrink the characters down. I know it's surprising, and give more room for the scenery, the setting that they're in, that they're living in. And as always, before I started working on the sketches for the two paintings that I work on today, I looked at a ton of references. So this is something that I'm really unfamiliar with. I'm not well versed in creating environments and settings yet. Hopefully I'll be there in not too long, where I feel like I can hopefully compose them from my own imagination. But for now, I was really studying a lot of different dramatic photographs of the earth, and I was paying attention to the overlapping shapes that happen. That I think is a big deal as far as getting a lot of depth into a painting and to show that there's a lot more space there. So that is something that I'm, again, not very good at, but it's exciting to be able to see these photographs that really capture that element that I want in my pieces so clearly. So that was what today again was, where I was focusing on the setting and the environment, but I also made sure that I was using references that had a lot of really strong edges or overlapping shapes, and I would pay attention to how they were overlapping and how I could compose that within the piece that I was working on, so that I would guide the eye the way that I wanted it to follow into the piece. Which is actually I'm really excited about this, because with nature I can be a lot more free to bend it the way that I want it to. With a human, with a person, there's really only so far you can change it until it starts not looking as correct or as human. And I want them to look relatively like a human, so being able to have some outlets that I could push a little bit further to utilize to get certain effects. Yeah, it just feels really exciting, because it is something that I didn't really have access to in the way that I normally format my pieces. And I do think that this really is a challenge that a lot of artists deal with. So I would love to extend this challenge to any of you guys who might be interested in doing more environments and have more settings for your characters to exist in, but you don't yet. Try to make a couple pieces that have either minimal characters or no characters, and it just focuses on the environment. I was surprised at how interesting I found it to work on these pieces. I always assumed that it wouldn't be interesting if there wasn't a person that was taking up a lot of the real estate on the piece. And I was completely wrong. I loved working on these. I loved thinking through the values and how to compose this piece and how I would get certain textures and how I would make sure that the light was hitting the different hills that I created, and I was also looking for ways to have repeating shapes. Yeah, it was just kind of eye-opening at how much I did love it and enjoy it, and it was something that I thought I wouldn't enjoy and I would kind of find as a drudgery. So yeah, I feel like there's this new door that's been opened for me that for a long time I accidentally let it get closed. But now there's more options and more ways that I can compose a piece that will tell more of a story and have more information in it. Okay, so we can go ahead and actually talk about these two pieces that I'm working on. So I actually ended up, this is the second pass for both of these paintings. It was really eye-opening on the first pass for both of these because I felt like I could just dive in and start working on it immediately, and they didn't turn out very good, honestly. And I think that that's because I wasn't controlling the values pretty much at all, which meant that suddenly the pieces were really, really flat. They were all these mid-tone colors. So I need to make sure that I am really paying attention to where the values are for a background like this. I need to make sure that the things that I want to be in focus are, and the things that I want to blend together are matched in value so that they're grouped together. But mainly I think that that's a big thing as far as getting a lot of distinction from one level in the painting to the next, to get a lot of depth, is to really control the value so that there's a strong contrast between one and the next. And on the second pass, I think I achieved it a lot better. I still have a long way to go and a lot more to learn about it, and especially about being able to get more dramatic lighting sources and really strong shadows that are cast over an entire landscape. But that's all stuff that I can learn as I get a little bit more practice. And the layout of the colors that I use is actually pretty basic for both these paintings. So for the one with the orange sunset and the green fields, it's basically a spectrum, a rainbow. So I have the yellow sky, well, basically yellow. It goes orange, yellow, and then we have a yellow-green field. And then the hill closer to that is even more green, and then after that it becomes more and more true green. So the closer the fields are to the sky, the more yellow they are, and the closer they are to the viewer, the more of a cool green they become. And that just kind of builds on top of the values of being able to delineate different sections. It's also kind of, I ended up doing it a little bit in reverse, where I did want it to hint at the sunset color, but oftentimes you'll have the atmospheric effect, which actually makes things, as they get farther away, less saturated and more blue colored. But this one I had a specific intention behind the way that the colors were laid out, but that helped me at least think it through and make sure that there was order to the way that I was addressing it. That was one of the problems that I had with the first set, is that I was just kind of putting a lot of stuff down at once without really thinking it through. And this, I was a little bit more strict with it. Even though it was more basic, it was strictly planned out from the beginning. But I'm really excited to be able to get more of an understanding of how to take these really natural and realistic references, or actually looking at real life nature and then turning them into a line language that I understand and that I think works well with my style of artwork that I already have. Because that's the thing with figuring out how to draw new things, is that you have to figure out how to interpret into your own artistic voice and your own artistic vision. So that's kind of the fun part with figuring out, like, how do I want to render grass blades? How detailed do I want that to be within my type of approach to it? And of course that can change with each piece and I can grow and develop, but it helps me to be able to think it through and figure out, okay, well, what kinds of lines do I have similar effects in my figure drawing when I'm inking those? Is there something that I can relate that to my nature and my setting type line work? And there's actually a lot of things that I think I'll be able to find that are in common with each other, and that way I can feel like I'm drawing from a certain well of experience, even if it isn't specifically in settings, it is in things that that have a similar texture or a flow to them. Like how I have the line work for these hills, some parts of that are pretty similar to how I would draw like a big poofy dress and how I'd have the fabric in some ways. And being able to take that as the cornerstone of how I'm creating these shapes and these lines, and then tweaking them so that they become more like the thing that I'm actually drawing and less like the thing that I'm remembering how to draw. But that's actually a great way to be able to ease yourself into working into new things, is to find ways to relate to what you already know and then build on top of that. That's the key thing though. If you don't build and learn and adapt it to what you're working on, then everything starts looking pretty much the same. Both of these mini paintings are available for sale at my art shop. There's a link down in the description. I also have a link over to my Patreon, which is a great way to help support me and my channel. And over there you can get exclusive behind the scenes content, as well as, depending on the tier you choose, exclusive artwork sent right to your door. But I will be streaming later today. That's a Saturday if you're watching this on a Saturday, over at Twitch. I do have a link again down in the description that'll take you over there if you want to go see my schedule and follow me over there so you can get notifications. But I think that's about it for today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.